Welcome to the 1911 podcast. There's me and Ewan, and also we've got our special guest, Gab, for today. Gab, how are we?
I'm very well. It's lovely to see you both. I think the last time we all did something together was for the summer deep dive on EFL debate back in July, and I think plenty to talk about since then.
I
Yeah,
think there's a
lots
lot
changed.
to talk about, Gab. I think that when we were talking, we were looking at your prediction table, and I think you put us in, was it 17th place?
No, it's
I think
20.
it was lower than that.
So it's 20th place. So
20th place, yeah.
I guess, obviously, because we're in October, what do you think's changed?
I had no idea you were going to be this good. It's funny because you'd had a brilliant stretch of form between January and March last season, but it wasn't like you flew over the line. I think it was only 3 wins from mid-March onwards. And it was often, it was Warsaw and other teams dropping off that did give you that window. And so I didn't see you being. I certainly didn't see you being sort of in the top two in League One in mid-October. I probably underestimated some of the recruitment. I did really like the Josh Nairfield signing and Joe Wright and maybe one or two others, but there are also other signings that I wouldn't have guessed would be this good. But that's where I think you have to give credit to David Sharp and the recruitment, because the outcome of the recruitment in terms of what players have produced in the last 2 summers is drastically improved from summers gone by. So every credit to the club, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Just before we go on to sort of more talking about City, we do want to do a quick recap of obviously yesterday's game at home against Barnsley. And I think we were talking about it just before we went live, that Barnsley are probably the best team that Bradford have faced at home so far. A close second maybe to Wimbledon, who came and really hurt us. But Barnsley hurt us in a different way, I think. Wimbledon may have scored 2 goals, same as Barnsley did, but they sat off after they scored those goals, which I don't think at all Barnsley did. That was not in their game plan. It looked 15 minutes after they scored their second equaliser that they could have gone on and won it. Gab, what has impressed you so far about Barnsley and how they set up under Cora Hurahan?
Yeah, Barnsley are another one that have sort of outperformed my expectations. I think Barnsley have obviously Davis Keeler-Dunn and Adam Phillips. They rotate really well. Their front four with those two, Caelan Vickers and Reyes Cleary. I think their academy's in a really nice position at the moment. They've got Johnny Bland, who's really highly rated. They think he can go very high. They rate him very high internally at Barnsley. Johnny Bland. Obviously, they've got Jack Shepherd, who you'll be very familiar with at Valley Parade. He's kicked on again. So, positive season so far for Barnsley.
I have to mention as well, yesterday for me, I thought Cleary, even bar the ridiculous goal that we saw, which I have to be honest, when I saw it even hit, I went, that's going in. I think he's a phenomenal footballer. For me, the best player I've seen at VP this season. How crazy is it that they've got him on a 4-year deal from West Brom? I mean, he has got uber amounts of potential, right?
Yeah, and Barnsley fans have been really annoyed that he hasn't been playing more. When you look at a lot of the posts when they put out the team sheet before matches, the one name they're looking at that hasn't been playing for the last few weeks is Cleary. And you can see why they want to start him, because there were times in the last game where they ran the show and it was all coming through him. His forward play is absolutely brilliant, and that's not even, like Chris says, discounting the amazing goal that he scored from well inside his own half.
Yeah, it just what a play. What do you think about him, Gab? What do you think Cleary brings to Barnsley?
Well, one thing I really like about Barnsley is they're a very aggressive pressing side under Conor Hurahan. I think he's brought a different level of detail to the role. I think he's a really exciting coach, actually, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he can bring. But I think any player in that attacking position, they've got that freedom to rotate and interchange, and I think that's been a real strong point of Barnsley's, and I think Cleary fits into that very nicely. So, he looks like a really nice long-term investment, and what a finish.
Yeah, well, it was a fantastic game of football, a real quality advert for League One football. Two teams going at it full throttle. It was even more full-blooded, I thought, than the Yorkshire Derby against Huddersfield a few weeks prior, and I certainly was more annoyed sitting in the stands than in the Huddersfield game, where it just petered out really in the second half, whereas that was a full-blooded encounter, really. It was a really good advert for League One football. So do you think that is the strength of this division, is that any team can look this good and play this style of football? Do you think it's a strong League One this year, or...?
Oh God, there's a very mean answer, which is I'm not even going to go there.
I'd like to hear it now.
Gab, I think I'm going to agree with you. I don't think this is a great League One season. I don't think this is I don't think that this is a great League One. I really don't believe that, and I think that a lot of I don't think necessarily on us. But I think that this is a very poor League One, where it's a league where I'm not particularly worried. Does that make sense to you?
I think for two clubs that were promoted from League Two last season and not with particularly high points tallies, and Stevenage to be fourth and above in League One suggests that maybe it's a league where, either there aren't as many financial powerhouses as there has been in previous seasons, when you've had your Ipswiches, your Sunderlands, your Sheffield Wednesdays, Birmingham for one season. So it's a little bit different in that sense. And also some of the bigger budgeted clubs are flattering to deceive. So there is a bit more space for clubs that weren't necessarily expecting to be in the equation to be up there. And that's how it's playing out at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, when we... on our podcast gave our early season predictions, I really couldn't call it in terms of the bigger clubs, like you said, in the league. And I kept using the phrase that someone has to underperform within this massive bracket of teams that are big in this league. If you think about all the teams, like even from Blackpool upwards of big teams in this league, someone had to underperform. And obviously we have seen lots of teams underperform throughout the year. Luton obviously being the massive example with the parachute payments that they have. But also teams like Plymouth, who you maybe expected to be up there as well, haven't had the greatest of start. And there have been more surprise packages than usually you would get in an EFL season like this. So I tend to agree, but at the same time, I wouldn't necessarily call it weak, more than a level playing field where every team is strong. I also think it doesn't help when a lot of the big teams in the league are going for these project managers. We've already talked about Conor Hourihane, who is relatively young for a manager. We're also talking about Jack Wilshere, obviously, who's just gone to Luton, and even Tom Cleverley at Plymouth. These are long-term investment managers. Lee Grant as well. Lee Grant, another good example. A lot of these bigger clubs are going for project managers. How do you feel about that as a sort of decision for these clubs who their primary objective should be to get out of League One this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the last two seasons you've seen Kieran McKenna, last three seasons, you've seen Kieran McKenna and Chris Davis kind of set the example of what can be done. The project managers, to use the apprentice term, can do it in their first seasons in senior football, and that's probably given big clubs in League One who might have otherwise looked at more experienced heads to be willing to take that chance. But I do wonder, I don't know, I'd love to hear what you guys think about this. Do you think experienced managers have become a little bit undervalued, maybe in the modern era, as clubs always try and seek to find the next star manager and maybe underestimate, managers that you can sort of rely on?
I think it's a fair question, Gab. I think that it's probably someone that we talked a little bit on the EFL debate this week about, was kind of like, I have this belief that managers have a 10-year iteration unless they are a little bit more special. I mean, you look at kind of like, for me, I think a manager has to understand the club, but but also has to understand the fans, which is something that we never, we never had. You had an interview with a manager the other day, and they were saying that they didn't. I got the impression that they didn't quite understand what it was to be a Bradford City manager. Okay,
Fair enough.
they
Yeah.
didn't. They didn't quite say that, but I mean, they were an established manager. For me,
I think we can say it's Derek Adams, the interview.
yeah, we can.
We're
We
beating
can.
around the bush
I'm
here a
trying to
bit.
be nice here. I'm
That's
trying to be
fine. Yeah.
nice. But I felt that in that interview, Gab, that he didn't understand what it was to be a Bradford City manager. And this is something that I've talked to you plenty of times about, that there are not managers out there that understand what it is to be a Bradford City manager. But you look at kind of like Graham Alexander and you look at the job that he's done, and he's somebody that has experience and was probably harshly sacked from at least two of his jobs. I'm talking Salford and I'm talking MK Dons. And you look at the job that he's doing now. I mean, the guy now is seen for me as, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but why not? Higher than Phil Parkinson for me. I
would subscribe to that. Yeah.
I don't know what you think, Ewan.
Yeah, it's hard to underestimate the achievement of that Phil Parkinson side, but that team was built on being quite plucky and valuing themselves as the underdog, whereas this Graham Alexander team plays good football, whereas the Parkinson era was plagued with some great football, especially in the League One years, but a lot of the time it wasn't pretty football.
I felt like the good football for you guys was more under Stuart McCall.
Yes, I would definitely call the League One golden era of 10 years ago. That was the Stuart McCall season when we got to the playoff final, when we did play really nice football and we were a gung-ho side, similar to now, playing with three centre-backs. But the better football definitely is Alexander's. The way we play nowadays is phenomenal compared to what we're used to seeing. Yeah,
I would completely agree with that, and you're right, Gab, in what you said about the kind of like the Stuart McCall years and year. And I think that obviously he took over from Phil Parkinson. We looked a different level with Stuart. However, for me, I think this team would beat that team.
Oh, undoubtedly.
And that's the crazy aspect of this season, where we have gone from I don't know, kind of thinking that we could. I mean, me on this podcast, me and Ewan said at the beginning of the season, as long as we stay up, or as I keep mentioning, it's about the 50 points. Now but I think
you were a bit more optimistic than that before the season.
Well, we said like somewhere around 11th to 13th. I think 11 and 12. I think me and Chris said, but the goal.
Where would you go? Where would you say? Because you're always very quiet about this one.
I love if I see
Ewan likes asking the questions.
Yeah. If I see a fence, I will sit on it all the time with every topic. And like I said when I went on the EFL debate just before Chris, there is no reason why City cannot get playoffs, if not automatic football, this season. There's nothing stopping us. We have no team that we should fear. We've beaten all the big dogs so far in the league. The only one we've yet to play is Stevenage, which is obviously the next game. And we shouldn't go into any game feeling, we're up against it here, or we can't play our football. We should play our football in every game, and we'll have a really good chance of beating any team. Whatever you want to say about the Barnsley game on Saturday, we looked slightly off the pace, but we still looked really good, and we could have won the game late on. And possibly Barnsley's goals did come slightly against the run of play, and we did look quite shell-shocked, especially when Cleary scored from the halfway line, and it really knocked the stuffing out of us. So it was a bit of an off day, but still, to play that well at home, get a point in a full-blooded game like that against a really good side who did hurt us, is really promising. There's no reason why, you look at the results we've had, beating Cardiff away from home, beating Luton at home, Stockport away from home, Huddersfield at home. There's some massive wins in there, big statements, and I don't see why we can't get playoffs at least.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And I think that
I'd like to throw in a caveat as well. It will depend
Go
what
on.
the big dogs do in January, because Luton are sitting on a bit of a treasure trove, and they may crack that under Jack Wilshere, and the teams as well around that may step it up as well. It
I'm
really
not
does
too
depend what
concerned
happens in
about that.
January. Yeah,
Ewan, I'm really not too concerned about that. Sorry, I'm jumping in, but like I'm really not. I think I looked at what a lot of Barnsley fans said about us yesterday, and they were very complimentary. A lot of fans said that we were the best team that they played this season.
You-
I don't think we were actually at us. I think for me, so I guess we'll talk about the game a little bit here. So I think we started off really, really well paced. That's the thing that we do really well
Yeah,
this season.
it's amazing how we start games, and you never really, Gab, you never really understand it until you sit down and watch us play like in a stadium. Because we'll for the first 8 minutes of a game, you'll go, oh, this looks fairly balanced, or oh, we just need to get hold of the ball and we can start playing a game, and then about 2 minutes after that, we'll be 1-0 up, and you'll go, oh, we scored, and then suddenly the game's in our hands, and we're playing good football, we're in the flow. Around sort of just before 1-1 and just after 1-1, there were multiple chances we could have had to put the game to 2-1, even 3-1. And the way we play, especially attacking the Kop at the moment, is phenomenal to watch. We can really hurt teams out of nothing, which is something I've never said about Bradford in all my years as sporting. It is quite a unique experience watching City at the moment. And that all stems, I think, from how fast we can be on the transition. It all comes from sort of the midfield of power, and it was Patterson yesterday who went off, but Metcalf, when he comes on, is such a great controller of the midfield. Is there anyone in this City team, I suppose, is that you've particularly been impressed by as a standout or maybe a surprise?
Max Power, I was wrong about you.
I was not familiar with your game.
Can I mention this? Can I mention that
please.
also Gab did a little video and saying why Max Power would not be good enough for Bradford City? Can we talk about that, Gab? And this is for the City fans, because we need to talk about that. There was a 5-minute video, Gab, where you talked about where you thought Max Power wouldn't fit in this team. Anyway, I'll let you talk.
Yeah, absolutely. Got to get it all out in the open. So I did have that view. I think also, by the way, on the Richie Smallwood call, fair play for Graham Alexander for making a tough decision, because he's not had the best start at Tranmere Rovers, which suggests it would have been difficult for him in League One. And actually, Max Power is a significant upgrade on Richie Smallwood. I didn't think he was at the time, and I think I might have been completely wrong about that. So
You were completely wrong, Gab.
yeah, exactly. But I think him and Patterson have forged a really nice midfield pairing. So and I think they complement one another's games really nicely.
Yeah, I think something that I love about Power that we didn't see quite enough from Smallwood is how much he gets in the ref's face. Like he, as I noticed it especially actually in his absence at Rotherham, where Sarcevic I don't think did it enough. He didn't talk to the ref enough. He didn't talk to his teammates enough. He's always shouting. I mean, before the second goal, which Humphreys flicked in, he was absolutely screaming. You could hear him from the Kop over all the noise, yelling at everyone to get into position. He's a real talkative person, and like Graham Alexander's been so complimentary of him in all the press conferences that he does, saying what a leader and team player he is, and how everyone wants to follow in his footsteps.
And I think that's important to say as well, Ewan, is that maybe we weren't expecting that, but Max feels like I've said screw it. I've said it on a couple of podcasts. I think that he was a proper captain where I don't think Richie was as good a captain as Max was. I don't, and nobody can change my mind on that.
It's hard because obviously you got to cobble together all the things that you expect from a captain, like leadership and how they command the team on the pitch. Like even the little things like I mentioned about getting in the ref's face, it all adds up. So I do understand better.
I feel that Max has got respect from the players.
Yeah, I feel that as well.
I'm not 100% sure that Richie Smallwood did. and that's probably really harsh on Richie. But I
I mean,
do.
we don't need to bash. I'm not saying you are, but we need. It's fine. You can respect what Richie Smallwood did last season, and also be really happy with Max Power and that he's taken things on another level. I think.
Yeah, I want to move on a little bit slightly as well, Gab, and
Sure.
talk about Metcalf, Jensen Metcalf.
Mm.
I'm not sure how much you've seen of him so far. So obviously, we brought him in from Everton under 21s. Played for. Well, we talked about this before when he was at Chesterfield. What a player he is. What's your thoughts on Jensen?
I'll be honest, not someone I'm enormously familiar with.
You need to. You need to get. You need to. You need to get because he's some player, mate. Get a little bit. But do you remember him at Chesterfield last season? Or
If I'm not mistaken, I don't think he featured loads for Chesterfield last year. I could be wrong on that.
No, well, he only he only scored one goal last season. It was against Bradford. So typically, but he was someone that caught my eye when we played them both all at home and away as someone who was really really good in midfield for them, and he has flown, I think, under most people's radar. So I don't blame you for not being too familiar with his game, but his calmness and control of the midfield is way beyond his years, and there have been a lot of City fans calling for him to start more frequently because up till now he's been a fringe player that comes off the bench late on in matches and doesn't get too much game time outside of cups and substitute appearances.
Interesting. So central midfielder then. So who would you would you bring him in for Patterson? Do you think?
Well, that was the change that was made yesterday when Patterson went off injured.
Right.
He's much more of a box to box than Lee is. Lee's a lot more, obviously tends to be slightly more stationary or attacking minded, whereas Jensen's more of a box to box. I'd say more similarly suited to what Patterson offers than Lee. A lot of fast bulldog energy, likes to get stuck in, but whereas Patterson, you want him running towards the opponent's goal and trying to shoot, as well as going back.
Just on that, Ewan,
Yeah.
just correct me if I'm wrong, but when you drew 2-2 at Rotherham, it was Tommy Lee and Alex Patterson who started. It wasn't...
Power was suspended for that match, so...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I suppose, so that suggests that Lee is seen as the alternative to... make sure I get my names right here. Lee, when Power's injured or suspended, sorry, Tommy Lee is considered the first choice. So maybe they think of Metcalf as more of a, but I think that shows Power how unique Power is to this squad because you could argue the other three are reasonably similar.
yeah, I think what it is, Gab, is that Tommy Lee has started the season incredibly well. He's looked like a new signing in a lot of ways. So. First 5 or 6 games, if not more, to be fair, Tommy Lee has looked the player that he was expected to be. Where he was at when he was at Accrington, and they would talk about him going to a League One team, like a higher League One team. He was looking like that kind of player. However, Jensen Metcalf is looking like he'll probably overtake Tommy, I think. Personally, what do you think, Ewan?
Yeah, I think Tommy's dropped out recently as well. Obviously, he had a really poor game against two. But he was poor at Rotherham, and then there was the game before
Blackpool.
that. Yeah, Blackpool at home. He was really poor, and there was an incident where he kicked a water bottle after being hooked because he knew he'd played really poorly. And yeah, it's difficult in his position because he tends to be quite static in the middle of the field until he gets going forward. When your long range passing is out, when you're a deep line playmaker like that, your whole game sort of falls apart, and that's the real issue I think that he's had over the past few games. To the point where obviously he could have come off the bench against Barnsley, but they went with Metcalf instead. So I think that was quite a big shift towards okay, well Jensen's now our backup for that more attacking-minded midfield role.
It's interesting though because I would have considered Tommy Lee to be more like you've had George Lapsley, haven't you?
Yeah.
I would have considered Lee Whether you think they're different ability, I think Lee's better than Lapsley, but I would have had them as similar profiles of players. But it's interesting that Graham Alexander likes him.
No, so this was the big thing that
Yeah.
happened over the turn of the season, because at the back end of last season when he signed in January, Lee was deployed in that Lapsley position as off the right or left of the front three as more of a forward player. And in the summer, he had a talk with the manager, Graham Alexander, and said, I don't think I'm best playing here. I want to play in central midfield. And Alexander said, okay, well, let's try that. And like Chris said, credit to him, up to that Blackpool game, he was like a new signing. He was unbelievably consistent in midfield. His long-range passing, fantastic. He controlled games. He was a great sweeper across the midfield as well, going forwards and backwards. And he was a real key part of why we've been so successful, I think. Because, like say, I would not... I know, obviously, he has played further forward in his career, but I don't think... Or I think every City fan would agree that he's much better suited in midfield with how we play. And also that we've got much better options going forward.
No, that's really interesting to hear, because he actually had a stint as a centre forward at African Stanley when they didn't have anyone else available.
Yeah, and he's not that position at all.
No.
Gab, is there anybody who stood out for you this season where you think they look really good for Bradford City this season?
I'm really enjoying Josh Nerfil, Chris. I love his energy getting up and down, the quality at the end of moves. I think one of the signings of the season for me.
Yeah, I think it speaks volumes as well. When I went to the Rotherham match, he was really poor in that game. He did not have a good game, and I walked away from the match going, "Why is his rating so high?" And I realised that completely, unbeknownst to me, that he managed to get an assist, and that's how strong he can be. Is that even when he's playing bad, he will still put in a quality ball at some point during the game, even if he's not involved, and it will get him an assist at some point. But he's obviously his prowess going forwards and backwards is brilliant. He's the quickest, Here's a good debate: is he the quickest player you've ever seen at City, Chris?
Oh, bloody hell!
that's put you on the back foot. That is a proper question. We might have to come back to that.
You know what?
Mark Marshall was really quick, but I think Nerfil's quicker off the mark than Marshall.
I mean, even at times against Cleary yesterday, who I thought was absolutely dynamite. I think there were times where he beat Cleary.
Yeah.
It's a great question. We're going to talk about this on the next podcast.
Yeah, whilst you think about that, I'm going to quickly run through the scores on the doors from the last League One match week. The midweek fixture was, of course, Huddersfield 1, Bolton 2. Great late win that for Bolton, 90+6. Always happy to see Huddersfield lose on this podcast. Mind the gap, as always. Big news at the top was Lincoln beating Stevenage 1-0 at home. We also had Wickham drawing at Blackpool 1-1. Cardiff beating Reading 2-1 at home. Doncaster losing again. That's no points now. No wins since...
No. It's no. I think it's no points since Jordan Gibson decided to do his little chicken dance, I think.
Yeah, I can't remember. It's no points or no wins.
Oh, no wins. Definitely no wins.
Definitely no wins.
Yeah,
and Luton losing in Jack Wilshere's first game at home to Mansfield 2-0 as well. Wimbledon winning again at Plymouth, tough place to go that. And Stockport and Rotherham picking up 1-0 wins as well, respectively, which leaves City in third place as things currently stand. We talked earlier about your table predictions, Gab. When we've talked obviously about how maybe even League One is this season, where do you see Bradford going from here? 12, 13 games into the season. Can Bradford City maintain this in the top three?
I think you've had a fantastic start, and it's great that you're in a position where, at the very, very least, you're going to be comfortable this season. And I think that shows enormous progress from a club that was massively underachieving and mismanaged in League Two. So for anything else, whatever happens between now and the end of the season, I'm absolutely thrilled to see the club in this position. In terms of what's possible, I think you've given yourselves a chance, certainly of top 6. In terms of top 2, I would probably say that the odds are that one of the big hitters are going to start to motor and might just have a little bit more. But I think that you've given yourselves a chance with the way that you've started, and I think you should be really proud of.
So I'm gonna press you, Gab. Where do you think we're gonna? Where do you think we can finish this season? Do you think? Do you think? Okay, and this is gonna be everywhere. Where do you think we could finish this season? Do you think that we're gonna finish 20th, or do you think that we're gonna? Or do you think we're gonna finish a little bit higher?
I think probably a little bit higher. I think if you ask me now, I'd probably move towards top 10. That's what I go for, and I think that would be a wonderful season. I still do. Right? So it's great that you've had this brilliant start, but I would also, and I think you're well within your rights as a fan base to be excited about what's possible and for between now and the remainder of the season. But I also think, as a sort of largely self-funded club in League One, to finish in the top 10 in your first season, I think that would be a great achievement, and I don't think that should get lost in how you've started. So, if you go on a bad losing streak, everyone at the club is still doing a great job. Let's just, that's what I would. That's how I would
just to follow up on that. Of the top 10, obviously 9, not including ourselves. We've of the ones we have played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 so far, and we've beaten 4 of them. What if City are to drop off? What changes? Because we've shown we can beat the big teams.
Sure.
So what in your eyes? You've already talked. I completely agree with your idea that one of the big clubs will start to build up a head of steam. I completely agree. At the moment, it looks like that's going to be Cardiff. But I think. Maybe you're being slightly harsh on the City if you think we will significantly drop off. Because I think the thing that I've seen from City so far is that we haven't shown any signs that we will suddenly start to go on a losing streak. Even if the gradual drop-off is gradual, we have shown enough prowess beating teams in the top 10 to stay within a chance of getting playoffs.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I suppose what I would say is, I think John Coleman used to say this at Accrington Stanley: you can raise expectations, but you can't lower them. And so I'm just thinking, just be a little bit careful in terms of, great that you've got this start. You've got half the points that you're going to need to make sure that you stay up for now. I don't know if it's a question of anything particularly changing. I think you've given yourselves a great chance of finishing in the top 10 and possibly being in with a shout for the playoffs. I would just kind of urge caution in terms of saying we're going to get into the top 2 because I think that there's.
Oh, I'm not convinced on top 2, but I would definitely say playoffs is now not an expectation, obviously, no way, but it is an achievable goal.
I agree,
and it's not a pipe dream.
I'll tell you what.
I'm sorry if it's come across like I'm saying it's a pipe dream.
I'll tell you what, Gab. I'll put this, and we've done this a few times this season. Over the years where we've had a little bet, but I will put a bet now that for £20 to the Burns unit, that Bradford City will finish in the top 7.
Top 6.
Keen negotiator.
No, but it is the top 6 rather than the playoffs is top 6.
Top 6.
Interesting. What would be your sort of feeling in terms of the reasons why you think is it what Ewan said in terms of how well you've competed against?
I think it is, yeah, and I think that from someone who's gone from being very happy to have been a place behind, above relegation, but also it makes money for a good cause. I will do a bet with you. Unfortunately, I've lost a few of these bets with you, Gab. But I will put £20 that we end up in the top 6.
Okay, interesting.
Will you take that on?
Yeah, go on then. I'll donate £20 to the Burns unit in Bradford if you make the top 6. I think if I was to, I just sort of, there's some of the names that are on that sort of team sheet that I'm just sort of, I don't know if I would consider them objectively top end League One players. I would use examples of Burn, for instance, right centre half. I know Ibu Touré's done well. I think he's a brilliant athlete. Sometimes questioned, from a technical standpoint. Is he a top end League One player? That's maybe not what the career history would suggest. Now, sometimes players can perform when they're in a certain environment and there's a certain culture in place that you could massively exceed that. But and maybe you can, and I'd be over the moon if you were able to do that. And I'm not saying it's a pipe dream at all. But I think if you finish top 10, I think that would still class as a fantastic season.
Perfect. I think now we want to. I think because we're running out of time a little bit, so I think we're looking forward to Stevenage on Saturday. Obviously, Stevenage have had a phenomenal, even better than our start to the season. Obviously losing on Saturday. However, we go down to Stevenage. What's your thoughts on that one, Gab?
Yeah, it's an exciting game, isn't it? Because two teams with quite similar stories in a way that there were sort of not enormously fancied before the season that have kind of performed well above expectation. Can I just sort of throw a question back to you guys?
Sure.
How much are you sort of? I don't know if shocked is the. Are you guys surprised by how well you've started?
Incredibly. Absolutely incredibly. I think, like I said, if you look back on the EFL debate when me and Ewan came on and we talked about it, and we said, listen, we were quite happy where we were. As I said on the EFL debate this week, I said I went to the Everton under 21s game simply because I wanted to see what our fringe players were about. It's been the best season I've had since '99. Like, it literally is. It is certainly to the start of a season. It's been that good. It's something that I am. The club has changed so much. Everything is right for me. I mean, Ewan, what would you say on that?
Yeah, I'd definitely agree. I think I'm not surprised because last season we did show real glimpses that we could play this style of football. But I think it's not a surprise that the team is well knit because that is clearly the atmosphere at Valley Parade at the moment. Is everyone feels like we are trying to build something at last at this football club. So it's not a surprise that when things off the field look and are going really well, that on the field everything looks really good as well. I'm a big believer in when things are wrong behind the scenes, the team will not perform. Look at Man United over the last sort of 5-10 years, that something is clearly going on behind the scenes there and it hasn't worked on the field because of that. And I think City over the past few years as well have fallen into that category as well. The things haven't been right on the field, but now things haven't been right off the field, but now that they are, the team can start performing, knuckle down and be really well knit. I do tend to agree with your comment that no one on the team sheet really sticks out as a top of the line League One player, but you could say exactly the same thing about Stevenage.
Yeah, that's true. And I think Stevenage are in a similar conversation where if they finish in the top six, it's not a pipe dream, but it would be a fantastic achievement. And it would be punching above the weight to a certain extent. So that'd be the only thing that I'm getting at. But you've done phenomenally well to give yourselves a chance. And I mean that as a sincere compliment. I know sometimes it can come across as a sort of a pat on the head. I don't mean it in that way. I think you've done...
That's very condescending. But looking ahead to Saturday, is there anyone on that Stevenage team that you think City fans should be looking out for?
Stevenage. I think Dan Kemp is the one to watch. I think he's a very lively attacking midfielder who creates a lot of... Do you know what I like about Stevenage as well? They trusted Jamie Reid to get back among the goals because he'd had a bit of a barren season the year before and Stevenage had struggled for goals. But he'd started the campaign injured and that kind of affected him. Whereas this year... they've started to create a few more chances, but also I think Jamie Reid has looked sharper. And Carpegiani's brilliant. But I think you've got some great players as well. I would say Joe Wright, Josh Naufil, Max Power, Alex Patterson, Anthony Sarcevic, and Stephen Humphreys have serious potential as top six League One performers. I would say the rest of the 11, I would maybe say a bit more around the mid-table mark. But you've given yourselves a chance.
I
So
wouldn't agree with. I think Torre's up there, man. I honestly do. I think Torre's up there.
Yeah, Torres had an unbelievable
well,
start to the season.
Yeah.
yeah, fair play to him. I suppose what I would argue is he did spend a long time at Salford City. And so, what if he's this kind of top-end League One player? Why did he not get taken up by?
Yeah, and I get where you're coming with that, Gab. And obviously, we know Danny, who is a Salford podcaster. He does his own stuff. And I would say that actually he said he wasn't even sure if he was good enough for Salford. However, for me this season, I think if I had to pick a player, bar Max Power, I would have said Torre.
Right. Okay.
I genuinely absolutely love the guy. I think he's Mr. Reliable. He doesn't do you know what? He doesn't have to be on the pitch. He doesn't have to do amazing things, but he does the basics well, and he does them very well. So for me, I think Torre is the kind of player that I think. To be honest with you, I think majority of the team. I really do. I really do think the majority of the team is good enough, and I think this season's shown that. Um, but yeah, Torre for me, absolutely, is is good enough. So, other than that, for Stevenage, anybody else we should watch out for?
I think Carpegiani's a brilliant centre
Yeah,
half. I think
phenomenal.
he's fantastic pro, just doesn't lose headers, and a real leader. So yeah, big fan of Pidge.
Okay, so right, Gab, here he comes with the questions. Are you ready?
Go
So
on.
we've got some questions from some City fans. Okay, I've
Okay.
got a really, really, really important one at the end,
Okay.
which is really, really, yeah, important that you answer. So anyway, so first question is from Tom Swithers, which is how much is Poynton worth? It's two questions, by the way. How much is Poynton worth? Is he as good as we think he is? And will his build let him down?
Interesting. When's Poynton's contract until again? 2028, is it?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he signed a 3-year deal in the summer.
Okay. Yeah, if he signed a 3-year deal in the summer, I think he's worth a 7-figure fee with a significant add-on. I would argue. I don't know what you think about that, Ewan.
Yeah, I'd tend to agree. I think the market is obviously quite inflated at the moment. It only tends to get worse as we sort of go on, but especially with his start of the season, we when we're talking about our great performers this season, we haven't even mentioned him. About the great start he's had, 2 goals against Huddersfield and more great performances along the way as well. Goal against Luton. He's such a key player to the way we like to play on the front foot. And obviously, being a City lad as well, he can do no wrong. I tend to agree with the 7-figure sum. And I think, yeah, he's definitely got that potential. But I would be really interested to hear what you think about the second part of that question, which is about his build, because he is quite small and he isn't the quickest. He's a good technical finisher, and letting him shoot anywhere near the penalty area is a serious threat. But it is. Would you say his build lets him down?
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes with young players, you've got to give them a bit of time to fill out a little bit. I'm surprised he hasn't moved earlier because I'm sure you remember there was a time where Bobby Poynton wasn't getting into the Bradford City 11 and people were kind of questioning Graham Alexander on that basis. And you've kind of got to admire Bobby Poynton for having the loyalty to stay at Bradford City as opposed to maybe taking other offers. But I think definitely the Championship and the Premier League are very physical leagues that are very demanding in terms of athleticism. So that's certainly an area of his game that he's going to need to add to.
Okay, so next one is Will Brook, somebody who massively appreciate. He's often on BBC Leeds. What was the moment this season, or last that you started to think differently about our chances?
It was Grimsby at home in January because it was the game. I think it was the game both immediately after Andy Cook got injured and immediately after Patterson and Sarcevic came back. And the way that you played those balls down the channels for Callum Kavanagh to chase and enforce the press, and Richie Smallwood was back to his best with those tackles in midfield, and you've got Patterson and Sarcevic with the legs. Everything just seemed to come together, and it felt like, although the personnel might have changed in some games between then and the end of the season, it felt like that was the template for that, certainly for that 2-month run where you were absolutely unbelievable, and the best team in the league by miles at that stage, and that was when I thought, yeah, there's a serious team here.
And next question is, why do managers and players talk about our style being unique and different to learn to play against?
What? Say that again, sorry?
Why do managers and players talk about our style being unique and difficult to learn to play against?
Well, I think what I really like about Bradford is that you play the ball in behind early. I think you created chances at Rotherham off the back of that just through Will Swan getting in behind and runners swarming forward. And I think when you've got that number of runners, it can be difficult to contain. So I think that's a big factor there.
I think it's something to do with as well. I sort of alluded to this randomly earlier about how we do tend to go under the radar, especially at early doors in halves, where the game seems fairly balanced, and then all of a sudden we carve out a really clear-cut chance, and we usually take it. There seems to be very little threat at times when you play City, and it's about the speed of how we can cut teams open, I think, seemingly at will, which is really impressive, I think. And I think as well, we saw it. I think the best example of this probably actually was in the EFL Trophy game last week against Everton, where the front three were completely unmarkable because they rotate so well. Talking about Humphreys, obviously, who has a massive experience playing through the middle, but mostly out wide. His danger coming in off the flank is really appreciated. Lapsley as well, who's got a history of playing through the middle, played that night, as did Kavanagh, who's both of them have played out wide and through the middle. And watching the front three move about and swap places randomly and carve out chances was fantastic. They all got on the score sheet in that 5-1 win. And that's something I think that hurts teams as well, is that inability to sometimes pick up late runners into the box. Especially when you're looking at our usual front three of Poynton, Swan or Humphreys, and then Sarcevic, who all like to come off the wing into the centre or like to occupy areas in the middle of the park, or the centre forward can go out wide as well. It's really difficult for teams to mark us up, I think.
Yeah. And the last question, which is the most important question, Gab. Would you rather have hands for feet or feet for hands?
Oh goodness! I mean, I think Bradford City fans would rather have had hands in my mouth, so that I wouldn't be talking.
I do want to mention this, for anybody who's still listening as well, is I've known Gab for I think 5 years now. We've become good friends. I think there's a lot of kind of belief that Gab hates Bradford. Gab doesn't hate Bradford. Just Gab has, unfortunately, for 2 or 3 years, he was right about Bradford City, but
I think I've been wrong about Bradford City more often.
I don't think you have, because I think every start of the season you go, oh, especially in League Two, you said, oh, well, we're going to finish mid-table. I just don't see the project of how it's working. And we went, oh no, this is finally going to be the year, and you were right every single time that it wasn't to be. So there is massive kudos to you, even if it is really annoying that you are, I think, right about City most of the time. But it has been really refreshing over the last 2 years to prove you wrong.
Yeah, I'm glad you proved me wrong.
And
I need bringing down a peg or two.
Yeah, and can I just mention that I do let Gab know this constantly as well, and I will constantly let Gab know when he's wrong about Bradford City. But listen, Gab, we really appreciate your time tonight, and thank you so much for coming on, and we really, really appreciate it. Ewan, Any last words, my mate?
Yeah, just same really respect for Gab. Please go check out the EFL debate. Me and Chris appear on there regularly. You can find them on social media, on Twitter, on TikTok as well, and on YouTube and on Spotify as well. That's where all the episodes go out. Please go check it out. It's fantastic. It's the best place to get news from all EFL fan sources, and it's a great insight into all three of our EFL leagues. It's a great show.
Thanks so much for talking to us, guys, and up the chickens.
Hey!